I couldn't really care less about the World Cup. I'll be perfectly
Oh, okay.
honest with you.
Okay.
I did the other week though. I went for the USA Netherlands game, right?
Right.
So
Right.
early morning, 8 a.m. We're at the bar, and it's just straight beers, cocktails,
Hell
and
yeah.
pizza, and we turned it into a whole mid morning drink-a-thon,
Nice.
waiting for other bars to open up at 12 and then going in there and then having more drinks
Oh
and
my
then going
God.
from there.
Okay.
Oh, no, no, yeah, like, I think by about 2 we were just wrecked. It was just like, okay, taxi home. Like, we put the dogs in the daycare and then we napped until about 4 or 5 and then we went out for dinner after that and then had a good time. Yeah, it was
Shit.
nice. We made a whole day of it, actually. Yeah, even after dinner, so we went to like a nice Italian restaurant and then that we hadn't been to, and after dinner then we went over to a bar around the corner. We stayed there until like 11 o'clock or something.
Nice. I bet the energy was pretty good then.
Yeah, no, the energy was, I cannot put more booze into my face. I'm tired. I don't want to be here anymore. This was nice, and now it's not nice
Oh
anymore.
shit. Okay.
This has devolved into alcoholism very quick, and we're not trying to do this anymore. Um, welcome back. Welcome. Sean just keeps being tired and not able to muster enough courage to be able to get through another podcast. Sometimes it's December is hard for me. I don't know. Winter is tough. Winter's genuinely a tough month for me, purely just because of when you wake up, it is just dark. When you're working, 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 it's light outside, and then by the time you're actually finished, it's like dark again, and like that to me is just like tough. It's just tough. And in Colorado,
Yep.
like we haven't gotten a whole lot of snow, so like in the last while, but it's just like the cold is violent. Like it's like this dry cold up here that really hits you, and ooh, ooh,
Yeah,
it's
you guys just had like a big blizzard-ish thing, right? We're okay down here the other day, but
it was supposed to snow yesterday. It didn't end up
oh,
snowing.
okay. Yeah.
We saw some flakes, and that was about it. But I was so surprised. You look outside, and all of a sudden, it's just fog everywhere,
Yeah.
and the sky is just full on, just looking like, just like it's just ready to dump on you, and it just never occurred. And it's like,
Yeah.
what are you threatening me for? What are you threatening me for?
But December in general is crunch time for a lot of devs as deadlines get rained down on you. So rough for
Absolutely.
a lot of people.
Yeah, and a lot of people on my side, like everybody goes and starts taking holidays, and then that usually ends up being like that. The last 2 weeks of December is completely gone. PMs are always trying to get a fucking app release for December and try to say like, can we get one into the queue before the App Store closes down for December as well too? Because that always happens. But it's always a difficult thing. Like in the commercial world, you'll see a lot of these games will start change. Have already, if not, changed over their app icon over to the winter version. They're probably running some winter event right now that it's all just themed around winter or whatever like that. So one of those seasonal events that are oh so important to the monetization and healthy life cycle of a free to play mobile title these days. Um, Got to constantly be changing up the game, even in December, even when you don't really want to be doing it or getting there. But you know, trying to have at least one major event per quarter is, I think, still the goal, still important, still the biggest thing, right? Like I think when we're talking about monetization for mobile games, it's like the bigger thing for me is like especially when you're trying to scale a game is about setting your month to month P&L reports, right? So um, we were talking about this a little bit offline of like, hey, like these free to play titles, like it doesn't matter if you're an indie, it doesn't matter if you're commercial, they have to sell. Like you are putting out a product, right? Anybody who will tell you differently is lying to you. I've had that happen to me very recently by somebody who is in a very prominent position, and that was scary nonetheless. Because I think it's just delusional to say that yes, we are making games, but it is games as a product. And it doesn't matter if you're putting out a $70 title on a console. All of these things are they're still products. There's something that you're selling, and to evolve away from that is, I think, farcical from the business. It's farcical from your own, from realistic expectations of like what we're actually doing here. If you really want to be an indie darling and not give a shit about it at all, not care, then put your game out for free and just leave it. Whatever. Good luck to you. Get the notoriety, get all the downloads, enjoy your fame and hopefully fortune will come to you later on, right? But if you can afford to do that, great. If you can't afford to do that and you're putting tens of thousands of dollars on the line and your time and your effort and all of your energy into something, we need to see returns. Like, we're not doing these things for nothing. We're doing these things to try and one, everybody's trying to get some amount of like little bit of their own ball of fame, because ball of fame will help them to move forward and push forward into other ventures later on, right? Like, we want notoriety, whether it be on the game or on the actual company or on the self or whatever like that. I think there's always a little bit of narcissism there that we need to not ever disregard. At the same time too, lean into it a little bit if you want to use it as a motivation for yourself. But again, your game's gotta perform. It's gotta perform in some
I,
regards.
yeah, I think the angle like of games as a product, I think it's something people hear a lot, but I don't know. I don't think people think on it that much, especially if they're newer to this. If they're newer to dev and game design, they don't really think about it this much. And I think it's good to frame it that way, because we often think about the game's impact once we put it down there. But when you're saying, "Hey, this game is a product," you do think about um, the cost more, the cost to develop it more, and and the things around that. For example, two things, or maybe at least just one thing you might think about a game is like how easy it is to make, and also how easy it is to scale. Like, scaling, I don't think a lot of people think about that a lot, but that's like how long you can even have your product last. Like, if you can't easily keep adding new content to it, like, man, it is really hard to sustain a game for long term. So that's like one of the things that immediately jumped out to me as you were talking about it, was because that was a lesson I had to learn. Is like, in some ways, I was like, kind of wish I made a game where I could just be like, oh, the enemies have more HP and more attack. You have at it. Like, that's a beautifully scaling model that
Can
can
you
just
not?
work forever. I mean, I like for my game, I still need to create new stages and new weapons. Like, it is a content treadmill. We've talked about that before, but I do want to talk about it in more general terms. That, yeah, it's a product. You got to make it cheap to develop as well.
Yeah. Like, look, this is also, taking it with a grain of salt. Like, if for Randy out there, um, I will answer your fucking comments at some point, dude. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but
We hear them.
we hear them. No, but like, uh, taking it with a grain of salt though. At the same time too, it all comes down to expectation. Like, what are you actually trying to do with like your game, right? I mean, genuinely, like, are you trying to get it out there and actually be able to siphon a couple of bucks off of this thing? Do you care about like how much that money that makes, or do you just care about like getting it out? And I think that genuinely, if you're putting out like you really have not gone through a development cycle, if you've really not put anything out before, just don't even fucking worry about it. Just build something, just get it out to the store. Like, it's just more important to like get visibility and get something out there that's playable, interesting, and fun than it is
Absolutely.
to have to worry about like, oh well, what are people gonna do at day 180, right? Like no one cares. Like, I mean, you'd be surprised at how many people even get to that. It's minuscule from the day one funnel, right? So like, having retention out to day 180 and caring about that at the very beginning is like, nah. Like, I mean, don't worry about it. But scaling your game is extremely important. Constantly thinking about like, uh, how is this game going to evolve over time for the player is extremely important. And also just generally, I think just, you know what I mean, what am I selling inside of the game that's going to be able to recoup my own investment here. We were talking about like the cycle for mobile games right now is with how, you know, we get players into the game is still based around advertising through major platforms, right? Um, Nowadays, we have a new platform of TikTok. It used to be a lot cheaper. It's now gotten more expensive and more dense as well to try and get through, which is like a little bit of a difficult thing. It's also a different type of advertising platform as well too, because it's mostly based around video rather than static images or anything like that. So it's a little different than it is on Instagram slash Facebook or anything like on those sides. But the important thing to look at though is just that you're going to have to spend money and some amount of large budget up front to be able to try and buy in some users. If you haven't been able to build any sort of organic wish lists beforehand, if you haven't been able to build up some community beforehand, which is, you know, everybody goes and says those things, fucking try doing it. It's extremely difficult. And if people just like don't get the creative of your game, like you're almost dead in the water at the very beginning, right? Like it doesn't matter how good your gameplay is if it doesn't sell it by the art and the art style itself. Like if you don't have that, you're already shit out of luck.
Yeah.
Which is a sad reality too, but it is reality, right? Like you have to be able to sell it off of a key art image, and a lot of the times, like you'll see people like that's where you start, right? Which especially when you're trying to find an art style for like a gameplay and everything like that. And we've talked about that before of like, you know, different companies putting out fake game pre-order pages on Google Play, making fake trailers, advertising a little bit around all of those things, and then trying to see which one performed the best, and then using that to say, okay, well, this is the way the gameplay should go. And then doing the same thing with, wrapped in an art style, and then saying, okay, well, which art style performed the best? And then, okay, now let's like turn the cogs, let's mash those two together and try to make a performant game that has this gameplay style that seems to resonate in market and this art style that seems to resonate in market, and see where we can net out on all of those things. And not every game company does that. That's like a very like analytical upfront approach to be able to try to pick direction. But if you're trying to bet on the winners, it's a great way to try and, you know, try and get an early direction beforehand. Spend some money up front. Like people will, you know, in entrepreneurial places will call that like that's your MVP, right? Like you've at least done some product focused testing in market before you've put pen to paper and said let's go forward and let's go and start building something, right? And I think that I don't know how important it you know, like I think it's still important, but it's a different way to make games, right? It's a much more product focused way of making games. You're trying to basically like do what sales people do for like physical products and say what's the need in the market and how do I fill it, right? And what am I going to fill it with? And you kind of poke and prod a little bit, find that edge, and then see like does it actually resonate the way that you think it will. And that can be very difficult for people to kind of, I feel like, grok or think like put value and constraint into when we come from a creative field where people are like always like,
It's not art. It's
yeah, it's
not
not
you're
art.
what yeah.
Yeah, you know, but guess what? There's room for art. You know, there's always room for art, but there is art in design, right? That's I constantly have this conversation with my girlfriend, just like she's like, oh, but it's beautiful, it's art. And I'm like, yeah, but there's in theatrics, like there's art in, you know, in the design of doing something, and but design still trumps. It's the little bits in between is where you get to play and like really hone a style within those things. Now, I don't know, like all of those things get into like how do we actually scale, right? How do we actually then we've got a product, we've done our product focused testing, we've built that product, we started to try and think about how do we actually get it to market. And one of the biggest things that I would always say is like pre-soft launch and post-soft launch is tooling. Like as designers, like it's extremely important that we have these content pipelines really nailed down. Realistically, like in pre-production, you should already be like working on those things, and you should be thinking about like how do I get more content into this game? How do I get it in seamlessly? How do I proselytize around all of those things? So how do I actually like build a process pipeline that says we're going to build a new character. That means we need 4 new animations. We need to have the key art for that thing. We need to have an icon for that thing. And you have it all lined out. You know exactly what all the pieces are to get that piece of content into the game. And those things aren't like blind faith that you're like, oh, I need new content. And you're like, what do I need? Right? Like it should just be a checklist of everything. And over time, as things change in your pipelines or as things change in your game, you'll see those things change. But making sure that you can just like make a consistent base of constant content pushes, and really important. This is something that I've had to deal with on the indie side, and I don't know about yourself, right? But in the commercial side, the goal for the games are to be as data driven as possible. And that comes down to using everything in your power to be able to put content into a game without having to do a client push, right? I don't want to, if I want to put a new character into the game, I shouldn't have to cut a new build, submit it to Apple, wait the 2 weeks, get rejected, fix some other bullshit that's not even a problem, and then have to go and put it back out again, right? We shouldn't have to do any of those things. So on our side, like, you need to build the game from the ground up that way. And that's hard. I found that really hard to get across to people of the importance of being able to sync data over a server rather than having like it just be in the client, right? It's like, yeah, you got it to Unity, yeah, it hooks up there, but like, can I change these values without it? Like, if a tutorial step breaks, right, and it's all in visual scripting, I shouldn't need to cut a new client build and submit that to Apple just because a tutorial step is broken. Now you have a 2 to 3 week turnaround to fix a bug that's blocking every single one of your players from getting through your tutorial. Or maybe it's 60% of the players getting through your tutorial. Like, that's a disaster. And making sure that, like, everybody is in line and cognizant of, like, that cannot be the case, will say, like, has been quite difficult, I think, from my side. I don't think that I've seen people put that much value into it in the independent side, whereas like I will stake the game's success or failure off of shit like that.
Yeah, you're right. In my experience with more of an indie mobile side where I've worked, yeah, we did just straight up new APK. Here you go, and then we had to wait for Apple's approval and everything. And yeah, it's definitely a pain. We luckily did not have to update for very often. We just did like very large holidays, so it wasn't too much of a nightmare. But you're right. I mean, we were probably leaving money on the table because we couldn't, very quickly and efficiently pump out new events. And I'll say, at least for the Christmas events, Christmas tended to be like triple revenue. These are not things people ignore. It's like the same with like going to the store and buying your Christmas themed ice cream. I mean, people are just all over doing holiday events and such. So it is definitely something you really need to think about in today's landscape, where everyone is so quick to leave a game in a way. So keeping them around, it's so important with live ops. And I think like here the most extreme example is Fortnite. Fortnite at this point is what?
Fortnite. I remember.
Yeah.
Every time I
Fortnite
hear it, I just like I love that song. It's like Victory Royale, down to got to get down to right now. Like I fucking love it. I love it.
Don't get that in my
It
head.
just goes. It goes through my head way too often these days. It's so stupid.
That's funny because every time you hear that trigger word, the song will get in your head. But yeah, that game really practically changes the game all the way around. And you know, that I think this whole topic that you kept talking about like pipelines and also revenue, and I think it touches on a really important topic to me, which is knowing. I guess you could say is knowing your goals, and it's a goal. It's the difference between AAA development and indie, and I think they are really more different than a lot of people think. And I'll first start with two core concepts I want to talk about. In recent times, I realized a really guiding question that I should always be thinking about, and every designer should always be thinking about at the root of everything. And that is what makes some games successful and what makes some games not. I think everything you study should kind of bubble up to this trunk of your tree. If you're not thinking about why games are successful in this manner, like you're kind of, I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad, but that's what matters in the end.
You're missing the picture, right?
Mhm.
You know, you're totally right. Like a game doesn't. You know, I mean, I don't know. Like it depends on the genre. It depends on where it is, like how big it is, or whatever, like that. But games live and die off of like how well they play sometimes. And a lot of times it's just how many users you can kind of get into the game sometimes, right? And keep them
Exactly.
around, right? And but I think it really depends. Like, but I don't know. Like, again, I just think it's facetious to just say like these things aren't products. You know what I mean? I don't care if it's The Witcher. I don't care if it's anything else. It's like they're still selling you a $70, $60 game. You know what I mean? You need to justify the cost to the end user of buying that thing. And then especially if you're upselling then into seasonal DLC and stuff, like the initial premise better fucking be there. And gameplay better be there and stability better be there. Uh, but also like I mean, how you sell that thing is got to be
Exactly.
top notch, right? Like you can't put out just like bad trailers and expect people to get excited about something, right? Like you gotta spend like a ton up front for those day one nowadays, which is ridiculous. I don't think that you necessarily need to do this, but like, did you see the whole like Twitch these twitchy people fucking 8 minutes making like 10 grand or whatever like that off of
No.
these bounties and stuff like.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's like watch an ad like for a little bit, get $1,000 like for 30 seconds, like and that's like whatever, I guess, right? Like if you have the eyeballs, then sure, like
Exactly.
scale the thing, but yeah, wow, like I mean, I
Yep.
wouldn't be. It's hard to justify paying these people to play your game at the same time too, because it's like they're also not really like your end user and they're not really like good users at the same time too, and they could be just there shitting on your game the whole time, and like that's not good. And you just spend like a crap ton of money up front for what, it's like.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's like difficult when you talk about like organic growth versus with your favorite audience, the audience that actually cares about your games. Um,
Exactly.
but I don't know. Like I think for me, like coming back to like just mobile in general, like as a PM kind of side of things, my goal is always to like try and get users to that first purchase, right? And I focus on that first purchase moment quite a bit. So I focus really heavily on live operations advertisements, right? Like and not advertisements outside of the game. I mean in-game ad products. So you're constantly like showing them creative that and a buy moment that tries to optimize into their price point. So starting from, hey, here's a 9.99 bundle starter pack, call it out, call it what it is, big boosts, give value, real value, try to show them real value within the ad itself. Actually, I'll take a side here. Back at Backflip, we did this completely wrong. Um,
It was the early days, so it was the Wild West, and nobody knew what they're doing.
yeah, I don't know how early it was, but this is, I guess if you want to call it early. But we at one point were putting out IAPs, and we would do these things called price scalers, right? That we would call them. I can't remember what we would actually call them, but let's just say that they scaled in price. So if the user bought at the $9.99 package, well, the next time we would serve them $20 package, right? We would bump up 2 tiers, and then once they wouldn't spend at that tier, then we would drop them down a tier, and then we would keep dropping them down until they hit a point where that they would spend money. Now, what we did that at the time was market standard. That was bog standard. Individuals find their price elasticity, find what an individual user is worthwhile spending on something. If you're a Sikh, or a SAR, I should really say, in some far off place, and you can really afford the $200 bundle, then why am I serving you $5 ads, right? Like, because I'm not optimizing the CPI of, or sorry, I'm not optimizing the LTV of that individual user, right? And doing those things can really help you to get the most out of your individuals within your things, but also identify, like, who are your whales, who are your dolphins, who are your minnows, blah 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 blah. To get back on track though, right? So what we ended up doing was that at every pricing tier, it was the same value. So the $9.99 bundle was the same items that you would receive if you were spending $20. So we would increase the price, but we wouldn't increase the value to the end user. And that is awful, right? Because people started then comparing offers and being like, hey, like 2 weeks ago I was offered this at this price point. Now they're offering me the same thing at a much
Oh yeah.
lower price point. And then everybody else would be like, well, no, I spent it at this thing. And it's like, that's awful, for one, because your players will talk about stuff like that. Two, if you're going to move up the price tiers, like, show real value. Like, if you're going to ask a player to spend $100 on your mobile game and have that $9.99 bundle that you should have anyway, you should have that. It might feel weird. You might not like that you're doing that, but you should have that. You have to tie real intrinsic value within the game as like a big boost to the player for those things. And finding what that really looks like and entails is a lot of twofold to me. It's like, one, it's knowing your progression loops, right? Being able to say, like, yeah, I'll burn the player through like this amount of content, but then that value of that thing will kind of peter off, and then they'll have to buy another pack to be able to get into like the next tier. And a lot of RPG style games will do that. It's like you have level 1 materials, and then you have level 2 materials in the second region, and because you're in the second region now, the level 1 materials are not really that valuable, but the level 1 materials, you just bought the starter pack and it made you burn through level 1 content really, really quickly, right? So now you're in region 2, it's like that progression's kind of slowed down, but you're still above the curve because you've had that pack to be able to upgrade your stuff faster than everybody else has, right? You haven't had to put as much grind or meaningless engagement into the loop to be able to like progress forward. So like constantly thinking about it, like I just think that like ads like that are just like just extraneously important, right? If you're talking about scaling an app, scaling a product in the app store, but always look at it month to month. Don't burn your marketing budget straight away into one thing. every month try to put out one new creative. I think this is the strategy that I want to take like going forward. It's like every month it's like brand new creative, see how well it performs within the market, spend a little bit against it every single like every one of them every single month, and then P&L every single month, right? So always try to have like a couple of new IAPs and learn something month to month in that cause, right? But at the start, spend 3 months and don't spend anything. Don't spend any money at all. See how many organic traffics you actually get in for the organic downloads, right? Just like who finds your game. Then start like tweaking, and then get the baseline monetization numbers from there, right? So like from those users, the organics that come in, how many of them actually spend, how long do they retain, how long do they stick around for in your product, right? Day 1, day 4, day 5, day 7, um, 10, 12, 14, blah blah blah. Just keep scaling it out, get those numbers, and then month to month figure out, okay, if I have this app creative and I have these IAPs and I've put this new content into the game, how how well does that perform? Did that increase the needle? Did it change retention somewhere? If you did tweak and said like, oh well, we did do a retention pass or something like that, right? Like we optimized our Fatui funnel, our first time user experience funnel. It's like, okay, well, how did that impact day 4, day 5 in terms of your, did you get people to the end of the week? Did they play, or was it like weekend play, midweek lull, weekend play, midweek pull? If you see things like that, it's like, okay, well, like, let's start optimizing where we put our milestone events or something like that, right? Like, those things are great to have midweek events so that you can try to keep and retain a player through the midweek rather than having that constant like Friday, Saturday, lull on Sunday play. Because like if you have that, then it's like, yeah, players are playing, but it's not like their primary modus operandi. They're not like coming back all the time. They're just coming back when they have time. They have their spare time. So like, can you build that engagement in over like consistently over those times as well too? Um, yeah.
I mean, yeah, like everything you described is not only pretty much what you should do, but is like what every decent company is already doing this. They're gathering analytics. They're really driving their product based on what they see and various other things. And as you said, it's moving them towards a more successful product. And one thing, it's like when it's very tempting because we have done this at a previous company where we were just looking at the market leader and being like, well, they've done the research. Let's just hop on this, and we're basically saving money. They did the research for us, but there's
Yeah, which
so
is
many
fine.
hidden. Yeah, there's so many hidden variables there, because your products. Well, let's just say your product, you just clone a product completely. The thing is, your company is not going to be the same either. You're not going to know how they. I don't know. Your ads are going to be different. The amount of cash reserves are different. Your company name and brand is different. So it is very dangerous to just copy something as is without kind of thinking at least or knowing like the reasoning behind that.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, it is funny because like some of the updates that we're seeing right now is like interesting ones going back to old like legacy games, right? It's RTX everything, right?
Yeah.
And when you talked about Fortnite earlier on today, it's like Fortnite big update. It is the flagship, obviously, of the engine, but to see it then go on to Unreal 5.1 or whatever, and then see all of the lighting engine and everything else there, I think that's a pretty huge achievement to be able to move a game that big and that strong onto basically a major platform update. Um, but also like think about like what that gets you back, right? When you do something like that, um, a lot of it for them is probably ROI in engagement with current player base, but realistically like re-engaging lapsed players, right?
Absolutely.
So like thinking about it like as a PM, it's like yes, like I can justify the cost of hey, we need to spend a month and integrate this game now with this brand new version of the engine so that we can one sell Unreal as a product, right? But also try to get players to really come back and say, let's go check out this new graphical update. And from there,
Honestly, I totally forgot that it was the Unreal Engine, like the flagship. You're right. I forgot about that.
yeah, it's as much as The Last of Us and Naughty Dog is on Sony, you know, these things sell hardware, right? It that's to me is like the point of any of all of those things now. But it's nice when it does it and it still drops you like millies in revenue, like back and back and back. But I wouldn't doubt that if people are excited about those things and then they see those, like if you paired that with like a great offer or a couple of great offers or a sale around that time, you'd be able to really bank off of the players re-engaging into a product that they may have lapsed out of, especially for like Cough Cough Warzone or something like that, right? And then get them in, and all of a sudden now they're like, oh, well, maybe I will buy that fucking skin bundle, and maybe I will because I paid for that money. I will stick around a little bit more, you know? Like, people don't want to talk about that, but if people spend money within your product, they're more likely to stick around in general because they've just spent money. So now, like, what are they going to do if they don't come back? Then they lose value out of what they just spent their cash on, right? So, again, getting that player to that first moment of purchase, I think, is extremely important for engagement and retention long term. It's like you need players to feel invested in the product itself because they've spent that cash. And because they've spent that cash, they're more invested than other players are on just a general psychological level.
Yeah.
Um,
One of the one of my main pet peeves when I talk about monetization with people, especially if they're more junior or just or a gamer and not really a game designer, they'll talk about aggressive monetization. I mean, we hear this all the time, but and that's it's fine. Obviously some games are overly aggressive, but like for example, one thing, like I mentioned, you got to know why some games are successful and some aren't. I kind of oh I wouldn't say I kind of I think it's a grave mistake to constantly point to successful games, successful IPs, and successful franchises as examples of how you should do things. I think that's again similar to before. It's a big mistake. Um, for example, people will point to League of Legends very often and say, "Hey, League of Legends, that's not trying to convert you. You can just play and grind all day." Uh, if you think back to the question, why are some games successful, which by the way it's a question that will take you decades, pretty much your whole career, to even get a handle of.
also,
Yeah, go
changes.
ahead.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
Like this whole the Fortnite live services thing. We didn't have that like 10 years ago for sure. But if you're pointing to League of Legends, you're ignoring the fact that it has one of the largest player bases in the world. All your friends play it, and that's what really drives you to play the game. You're gonna stick around. If 5 of your friends are playing constantly and constantly asking you to play, you're gonna stick around. But yeah, League of Legends has notoriously bad monetization. It doesn't. If it were a smaller game with 10K players, it'd be dead, absolutely dead. It'd be making no money. So that's just one example of many why you can't just look at a leader and just be like, oh yeah, why don't you just do what they're doing? Um, yeah, because they're just not. There's just other factors in play that people aren't considering. So yeah, like you said, conversion matters for most games. When you're a bigger company, hey, maybe you can give them a lot more freebies and be more generous. But yeah, that's an issue.
Yeah. No, I'm nugging everybody off of the. I'm trying to. You got to optimize off of everybody when you're small. You got 100 users, like, oh shit, I need cash to put back into the marketing budget so I can have more than 100 users. Like, I don't know,
Exactly.
like, but on all of that, like, scale is a big thing there, right? Hitting a saturation point is a massive thing. Saturation point allows you to continue to pivot. So if you're making enough money off of the users that are in there, then you can kind of semi take the foot off the pedal, do more fun things, try to get
Exactly.
everybody else in. But it's again like about that first time purchaser moment, right? League of Legends first time purchaser moment is bundles for characters if you want to push through the the gates there and just get all of the characters so you don't have to do the actual engagement progression grind. Obviously, that's changed over time. It used to be a lot harder to get to level 30 than it is now. Um, but and they've added blue essence and orange essence and all of these other different things. So they're constantly dropping like kind of free to play chests and keys and blah blah blah. So there's some obfuscation in the like the $5 to the $2, try to get players to make that conversion there. But before it used to be a lot simpler. It was just like if you're gonna play a
Yeah.
lot and you're gonna self-identify into a character or a role or a style, well then over time you're gonna find a character that works for you, and you're gonna want to self-express into the world that you're a cool player, so you get a skin for that character because the defaults are, they were fine, but you know what I mean. It's like nobody wanted to be default Andy. They wanted to be like cool Udyr. I'm spending 30
Yeah.
bucks, $40 on an ultimate skin type of thing. You know what I mean, right? And
You get shamed. You get shamed for wearing your default skin.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You get shamed for wearing your default skin. So there's social pressure there to be able to perform and do those things. But um, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough because it's just tough to do it. It's just tough to see if you can get it there. And I think the biggest thing is like, yes, you can see changes very rapidly, um, especially with like good optimizations that you can make. But you need to be tracking these things month to month, or day to day or whatever. Like you need to look at the macro a little bit more. You need to understand that you're going to be spending time really trying to do to like get you know really try to get those bucks right, and making sure that it's not just like something that negatively you say as a dev. You're like, well, I don't care about monetization. It's like, yeah, fine. If you really don't care, then cool, like whatever, right? But like some of us don't want to just eat fucking Chef Boyardee every fucking day for the rest of our life, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
like we see how much money these games make. We see how much money these people are spending. And if you're a small group of individuals or one individual by themselves, it's like, yeah, like can you make a game make $60,000 a year and then scale that year over year? Once it's already out there as a product, like yeah, you're spending a lot of that budget back in just redeveloping new mechanics, new skills, new content, new IP, new creative, marketing budget, blah blah blah. Like you know, this money goes fast. Like it's especially when you spend not recklessly, but if you're open up the floodgates and you're like, I want to, this month we're doing 5 grand months on just marketing budget. It's like, okay, well, see how long that lasts you, and also, I mean, not everybody can do that, not everybody can, you know, one, that's more than the median average of anybody in the United States' salary. You know what I mean? It's like that's
Yeah.
an incredible amount of money for a lot of people to be able to just say like, let's just throw that down and just do it. And like that's what I mean. I don't know. So like we're working on thin lines here,
Yeah.
trying to fucking rub two pennies together to hopefully make a quarter, and that's all it is, and a lot of the times, and
Yeah.
it's a
I
scary
was gonna.
situation.
Yeah. The marketing budget to go right back into ads. It is a endless cycle where you're, especially on mobile, your profits. I mean, I've heard a large number of range. I think some I've heard like 20% to even 50% of profits go right back into ads.
Yeah.
So you're already siphoning a lot of money there.
We've talked
But
massively about this though. Sorry, go on. Go on. I didn't mean to cut
oh
you off
no,
there.
no, 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 I'm good.
No, I was about to switch completely.
Oh, okay. Well, my last thing was I was gonna say, don't point at a game with a franchise and tell me that's how you're supposed to do it, because Marvel Snap is the most generous.
It's a Marvel
Uh,
game.
yeah, it's the most generous card game I've seen. You don't open packs; you get all cards for free eventually. But yeah, exactly. It's a Marvel game. Like you don't need to. You don't need to do a lot of things when you have that name behind you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I mean, the IP sells itself. Just like Monopoly has, we were constantly told like a 98% brand recognition across the
Oh
globe.
wow.
The
Oh wow.
globe. So like everybody knows Monopoly, right? So if you're gonna put
Yeah.
out a Monopoly game, people are gonna be like, oh yeah, I know what that character is. I know what that M stands for. I know what Monopoly is, right? So having that brand recognition lowers your cost per install. Excuse me, lowers your cost per install. And if you can then make a play to monetize off of those things, well then it's all about the delta between your cost to install and your lifetime value of that user. That's your profit margin right there. If your LTV is lower than your CPI, you have a problem. Like you are spending more money to get users in than what they are worth. So you have to try to optimize and get the user to spend more money within the product itself. Usually that's a moment to go and say, cut the taps, don't do any marketing, stop spending on the budget because we're spending more money getting users in than we are actually getting them. Can we optimize within the product to try to squeeze more out of our individual users? And if you can't, like sorry, like your game's never going to be profitable. You will just spend money into the grave and you're going to lose everything. And it's, that's the reality that people will face. Your game, the amount of games I've worked on that were on the App Store that don't exist anymore too, like the whole portfolio, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's hard. Then you go to people and you're like, oh, I'm a game designer. I make games for a living, and then that should be like this nice like thing is like, and it's always hit back of like, have I ever played anything that you ever heard of? Like probably not. And guess what?
I hate that.
I couldn't show you if I fucking tried.
It's like such a it's such a shame moment. You're like, no, I
Yeah,
didn't.
it sucks. It's depressing. It is really depressing. Really, really depressing.
That's why we gotta quit our jobs and join a AAA company. Just work for Naughty Dog. And be like, yeah, you're playing my games. Get
Yeah.
that nice ego boost.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I don't know if you can also take solace in those things, like good for you, like, but I don't know if I can take solace in being like, I'm on 1,000+ person team across 3 different studios and we're all
Yeah,
making
yeah.
this one game, and hey, guess what? I did the leg animation on
See,
this
the thing is,
you know what I mean?
they'll never ask you that. They're like, "Oh, damn, you worked on The Last of Us? That's amazing. I loved it." Just don't mention that all you did was like tweak the sounds.
Grass textures and
Yeah,
this one level or whatever. Yeah,
yeah.
like
Testing.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you test it, well, good for you. But that's the thing. It's like I don't know. I could never. I find it hard to be satisfied in those moments. I don't feel like I have the autonomy over the game. I don't feel like I have the ability to move it in nice directions. I don't feel like that that the work is as necessarily as valuable when you're doing it on that micro level, but I think that it is still obviously valuable. If you have that many people and everybody is hardcore focusing on just the one little individual experience of just like one little part of a game, then that should theoretically build up into these amazing models. As long as
Yeah.
you have like good overall direction and somebody is looking at the macro of the actual product and you can actually finish that thing in like 4 years, 5 years, or whatever. But
Yeah. If you are making a product that you're really proud of, I mean, that is what most big teams do. I mean, that's why we come together as people and we make big things that we couldn't do alone. So there's definitely value there.
Absolutely.
Gotta get some more coffee.
I do. I ran out like within the first 3 minutes.
Hey,
I
we got
started with half a cup, and that was fucking dumb. So
bad project planning.
yeah, Jones over here. Look, there's loads of things. I mean, we could talk about the content treadmill side of things. You were talking about AI art being one of your ways that you were thinking about scaling.
Yeah, I think every designer right now, or not designer, every probably every studio, unless they have like an artist at the helm of it, are like, how could AI art help us? So I
Yeah.
think it's a totally new field. Apparently, there's a lot of banning and regulation happening right now with AI. So I have no idea what's gonna happen.
Yeah, these are the things that interest me. Like China, I think has like a interesting actually approach to it that they've just talked about. It's like all AI art must be watermarked at all times, which extremely difficult to enforce. Like I don't know how you're really going to enforce that.
Right.
Like this is
Right.
this is AI art, but at the same time, it's like if you are genuinely able to kind of do that, I think that that's massive. I think the bigger thing is right now for me, and we can talk about this at a later time as well too, is like the data sets behind all of these things have all just been kind of capped and stolen, right?
Yes.
In realities, for reality's sake, it's like, Google creates a search engine list of all of the images and all the things that are on the web, and we go to them and we go view them, but then we can go straight to the web page and we can go at least see that web page. For AI art, there is this hidden ambiguity that like what's coming out is supposed to be fresh and new, but it's all coming from data sets of stuff that is all made by people, and those people are not getting attributed. They're not getting any sort of payment out for any of this stuff. Is this where Web 3.0 can fill a need here? I'm not sure, right? Like, but tokenized 3D art or tokenized art and allowing, if you're, in the data model, if your art was pinged, you get some semblance of revenue from that thing, right? From the platform.
Where do you personally stand on this? I think this is kind of a contentious topic.
Obviously, I like the idea of AI art. I think that the innovation is massive. The potential is gigantic. But if we continue down a path of just saying everything is AI and it's all AI all the time, we've lost out on the humanity of art, right? Or the humanistic
Yep.
element that that allows us to be creative. Um, there was a Reddit post there. It's just like a repost that constantly keeps coming up of like um, Gillaby Studios, like the animation studio in
Oh yeah.
Japan,
Right.
right? That
Right.
does like crazy, but they all do like hand drawn stuff all the time, right? There's like a video of like this group coming to them with procedurally generated 3D animations of like grotesque figures like crawling on the ground or whatever.
Yeah.
Realistically, it was a bad AI model that they were trying to create into like a walking person that could like make procedural animations, and they
Yeah.
failed. So they reframed the product into like, oh, it's zombies and grotesque. It's like, and the older guy just goes and says like, as humans, we are moving further away from believing in ourselves to have the ability to create.
Ooh.
And I was like, all right, dude. Okay, well, maybe we could use a little hand here and there, but it's true. It's like the more and more that we say like that CBT chatbot thing that you were showing me there the other day. I can't remember what it's actually called, right?
Right.
That gave you the boilerplate code for the load save, and the more that we devolve into these things, the less as humans, we try to develop solutions to our own problems, and we are reliant on something else to tell us the solution to
For sure.
something else, which just makes us semi less creative over time. And we need to believe that humans can really and truly innovate within these spaces more so than what we're being shown. But
Hey, most people can't navigate a map or drive without GPS, so we've basically gotten rid of that whole hippocampus growth that we've had about navigating our world and remembering the maps in our head.
oh,
So
I know my girlfriend still does not know where fucking 28th Street is, and asks me, "Do I take a left here?" I'm like, "We're going to my apartment. You know where I live. Like, you know where
hey,
you are, right?"
we can't navigate Skyrim without our mini maps. It's okay. I understand.
Yeah, it's sad.
Don't. But yeah. So and a lot of people are like, oh well, it's okay to get rid of that side of our brain because we don't need it anymore. But now we're talking about something like you said is more core to quote the essence of human, our own creativity. And yeah, if we keep going down this road, I have no doubt we will be less creative. I know people argue, oh, that just means we'll be more creative at other things, but I don't think so. I don't think that'll be the case.
Yeah. I'll leave it with this, and we can have a whole discussion about this before later on. But
Sure.
there is art in design, and in getting new perceptions, where like AI art will, if you just go and give it, like the humanistic sentence of like an avocado chair or something like that, right? And it'll show you 20 different chairs that look like avocados. And if
Right.
you're a product designer, you look through and you say, okay, no, I kind of want it to actually be like that one, right? That's great because it can help you to show a new path at the same time too. But then you have to still go back and still think, well, there's the art, but where's the design, right? How does that chair actually work? How does that chair work within your own field?
Yeah. Right. Right.
Like what is, does it even have stability? Could somebody even sit in that realistically? What materials would you need to use to like make something that was anywhere inevitable along there? Like where's the reinforcement points? And a lot of what you're not going to get out of any sort of AI generated thing is a lot of that right now. Unless
Yes.
you're in SolidWorks doing complicated things and you're seeing real AI models, like showing the organic, you know,
Yeah.
you know, these
I
organic patterns for cars to make them lighter, faster, and everything else like that. But yeah,
I totally agree. There's an evaluation portion which they haven't quite gotten to yet, and when it comes to AI with games, it's a similar thing, because the designer is the one that hopefully throughout their career has learned what makes a successful game and what isn't. They're the ones that are gonna read the 100 AI code or art pieces and be like, okay, this is what's gonna actually make it successful. So
Yep.
we still got our jobs for now. We'll see.
For now. All right, Colin. Thank you.
Yep.